All right, we'll get started here. If people jump in later, they will jump in later. I am convening this meeting of the Game Mess Game Club for the month of August 2022. And this month's game was Ninja Gaiden. I think most of us, maybe all of us, Sigma, if you wanted to play the original or Black, that was also okay. I know that I certainly played Sigma because it's the only version that's available for PC as far as I know, and it was on PC Game Pass, so it was just very easy to play that version. Beef, what version did you play?
So I did do black because I actually bought black back in the probably like a year ago or something. So I actually did play the original. Well, updated original.
I know that like the fans say Black is better than
hmm
Sigma. Apparently, like Sigma changes some of the puzzles or something, and also like so Sigma, like its big thing it adds are those extras chapters where you fight as that woman. It's filler. It's absolute filler. So adding it doesn't do anything for the game.
It also removes some of the puzzles.
Oh, just straight removes them.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, it's. I mean, we'll jump into it in a sec. But Randy, what version did you play?
I played Sigma as well for the same reason, Game Pass. I tried to emulate it on the Steam Deck. I couldn't get it running in the way that I would like. It was a little bit choppy.
Hmm.
I tried to purchase it on the Xbox 360 store of all places, but apparently if you replace the hard drive in your Xbox 360, you cannot buy original Xbox games on the Xbox store. The support
Oh.
told me that.
Oh, weird.
So I refunded it, which was fine. I tried to find a local game store that had it, $50. So I figure
Wow.
just
Ooh.
try to play I already had Game Pass, so $0 versus $50. I decided to do that.
Did anybody play this game back when it came out? Because I know I did, and for people who don't know, this game got glowing reviews back when it came out originally in like what 2002 or whatever it was. People couldn't heap enough praise on it, and we had it, and I played it and enjoyed it. I think at the time I wasn't quite good enough to get too far in it. I probably made it, not too far past the Zeppelin chapter, to be honest.
I did back in the day, and can't remember why or where, but I know I played it. I know I didn't finish it also, but that's part of why I'm going off of tonight because, like I mentioned before we started recording, I didn't actually have the time to play through the game this time, but I have played it in the past, and then I watched your streams of it.
Yeah, I did stream through the whole thing. Beef, did you play it back in the day?
No, I'm much younger than you. Maybe I don't know even why. I was like, I don't even think I heard about Ninja Gaiden until probably even after 3 came out. I don't know.
You're
Those are back in the days we were playing COD
you're
all
pro-
the time after school.
you're probably the age that I was when I was probably that young when the original Ninja Gaiden came out on the NES. So
Yeah.
yeah. Randy, how about you? Did you have any experience with the game prior to this?
No, not really. I'm roughly your age, Mike, a little bit slightly, maybe 1 or 2 years younger, but roughly the same age. I was a PS2 guy. I did not
Mm.
have, and I was not, I did not have the luxury of multiple systems really. So I was PS2 and then Xbox 360. So I did not, I skipped, I had to avoid both versions because of the console I had. So I missed this one completely. I was aware of it. I remember I was watching a lot of X Play and G4 at the time, and they just would not stop talking about it. And I was like, oh man, I wish I could play that. Instead, I played the PS2 version of Shinobi.
Oh, places you had that. You had your Onimushas. You had your ninja slash samurai
The itch
slash
was scratched, definitely.
yeah. You had guys with swords and stuff. Games for sure. But yeah, Ninja Gaiden seemed to be on a different level, at least in terms of that critical response. Again, yeah, people just couldn't get enough of it. So, and I was really excited to play again because of that. It was a game that I didn't beat before, so I wanted to get back to it and finally really get it off of my pile of shame. So I was pretty happy when it did win. I mean, this game has a really, really good first impression. The first few levels, especially when you're in like that ninja village, and then you're in that Zeppelin too, those are really cool. Sometimes they're a little cramp, and we could have a whole discussion about the camera, which I think originally may have even been fully a fixed camera, and then it's like you can move it around kind of in Sigma. It's like a weird. There's so many aspects of this game that feel like a weird holdover from the Resident Evil era, which itself might be a holdover from this game taking inspiration from Onimusha, which was in turn like either on the Resident Evil engine or maybe even at one point supposed to be a Resident Evil game. There's so many of those from Capcom. But, you know, there are these weird things. It's like, oh, there's like a Resident Evil style puzzle here. It's not complicated. It's just find a wheel and put it into the thing. But it feels like Resident Evil for a second. And it also feels like that a little bit when you know, have these fixed camera angles and things like that. But then the combat is just, it feels really good. It's a little archaic in the sense that there's no like targeting system or something like that, and it can be a little weird when you have moves that just auto target people because they won't auto target who you want to. But like the combos feel great, the flow of it feels awesome. When you get to do things like decapitate people, you know, it's pretty cool. I would mark out for those moments.
I do want to add before we get too far away from this. On the historical context, this is actually something I can contribute to here. So you mentioned Onimusha and how it feels like an RE game with the fixed camera angles and everything. So Onimusha and Devil May Cry both were originally intended to be Resident Evil games. It was a Resident Evil it was a Resident Evil like Japan game, and then DMC was one of the iterations of RE4, and then they both became their own things because the projects got too big.
Right.
And I did want to bring those up if you didn't, because to me, this game, one of the reasons it never clicked with me back in the day is because it always felt like somewhat of an imitation of those games, which makes more sense now that I was looking back at it when I was doing the organization for this. And I was like, okay, what was the year of the original release? Because I want to put that in the title for us. I saw it was 2004. Which really surprised me because I thought this game was a lot earlier than that.
Yeah, it's a late Xbox game, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's only a year away from the 360. And that actually kind of surprised me, but it also makes sense as to why it felt kind of like a ripoff to me. Which, you know, I'm not like trying to crap on the game already, but it feels like they were kind of trying to chase that like DMC hype a little bit over on the PS2.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it makes sense. Like that was probably the most notable action game of that era, at least until we got God of War, right? And that's kind of a nice thing, even though this is about that era of God of War, and action games largely followed that mold for a while, the super combo focused stuff. This feels like a different path, and I think you kind of appreciate it for that, right? That it's not like God of War.
Right. And just the fixed camera angles are... I think the dead giveaway that maybe someone played the original Devil May Cry somewhere at Team Ninja was like, hey, this is that good stuff. We need to do this.
As was the style of time. I mean, God of War, maybe I'm forgetting, it also kind of did that, but what it was smart about was that it pulled the camera way back, right? So it kind of worked. It was advanced a lot of time here. And again, like that Zeppelin level, which I thematically love, there are some tight spaces in there. It's something like it's hard to see what exactly is going on in there. Sewer Leak, hey, how's it going? Is it Sewer Leak or is it Sure Leak? How should I say that?
It's Sewer Leak.
I thought so. Welcome to the discussion. So does anybody else have kind of any other thoughts on that camera? Like, I'm usually kind of somewhat immune to these things. A lot of times when people say a camera's so bad it hurts a game, it's like only ever a minor inconvenience to me, so I'm relatively bulletproof to these things. Did the camera really bother anybody?
It drove me nuts knowing that the perspective was drawn distinctly for the purpose of loading in the textures and graphics for what you could actually see in order to reduce the load times.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about it like that, but yeah, that's kind of like those were the concerns back then, huh? That makes a lot of sense.
I don't know, maybe this is an age thing, but I grew up in the early 3D gaming days, so I'm just kind of tolerant of it. I was trained on it. It was terrible when it first started, and this is kind of like, it gets caught on things occasionally. It's pretty tight every once in a while, but for the most part, I just have that intuitive ability to know where I am in relation to where the camera was, and kind of like just take a mental snapshot of where the enemies are. It's like, okay, I know how to fight this camera because I've been training this for years. My time has come finally.
Right.
I can show off my skills. So it's kind of annoying, but I think I'm just used to it.
I'm kind of with you there because I am a little bit younger, but still, I speedrun Mario 64, and my favorite game is Mega Man Legends, so I'm used to kind of bad camera controls. So whenever I fire up one of these older action games, I kind of just put myself in the mindset of, okay, well, you're oriented in this direction at basically at all times, so you're more moving the character than you are the camera. And I do feel like in games like these, it's okay because you press forward and Ryu moves forward, you press back, he moves back, and then you jump with the jump button. I feel like moving around this sort of diorama fixed camera perspective stage isn't as bad as it could be in other games, like say a shooter.
I mean, don't get me wrong. At least the camera wasn't drawn way back where you're trying to guess as to your actual XYZ direct position. But the other thing that was driving me crazy in regards to that was when you're trying to jump to the ledges and some of the different levels, especially like their dojo level and stuff. It's almost like floaty because you can kind of see the character hovering up and above, but you don't actually see the grab for the different positions that you're supposed to specifically be in order to grab ledges or climb up things or grab sticks or whatever.
If you want to talk about the camera, that's a whole new discussion. Like the jump. I mean, the jump I had many issues with. I could not line up those wall jumps to save my life, and it had nothing to do with the camera. It's just if the stick was not lined up directly with the direction of the wall, like I feel like I was doing a side run when I was trying to do an up run, or I was doing an up run when I was trying to do a side run. I just could not get it. It was driving me nuts, especially near the end, which I don't know how many of you guys finished it, but there's some pretty strict platforming challenges that kind of get a little annoying. It's not the end of the world, but I have definitely failed jumps that led to my death that I felt like I shouldn't have.
So I have two things. First off, who did finish it? Because I did finish it. Beef, did you finish it?
Yes, I finished it.
Rand,
I was about to say, I'm sure we can we'll do it in this later. Some of the platforming challenges are something we can talk about later.
we can't.
I've already beat it once. This was just an excuse to play it again.
Oh, okay. Randy, did you beat it?
I did finish it, yes.
Nice. And Turbo, we know did it. So the jumping is interesting because I do hear you guys that it kind of could get you annoyed sometimes, but when it did work, it felt really good. And Shawn was bringing up Devil May Cry and how maybe like this game's taking some stuff from that. I think one thing it does introduce is some of that wall jumping, acrobatic stuff, taking a little bit of that Prince of Persia flavor and kind of throwing it into an action game like that. It feels really good, and we have other games that have done that now, so we maybe take it for granted, and we have other games that are a bit more fluid even with that stuff. But I imagine back then maybe that was the element that really impressed people, was the way you can even use your environment to really sort of jump around and do all these ninja-y things.
Yeah, I think that's something you need to keep in mind when revisiting a game of this era, because there's a lot of things that are of this era in this game.
Yes.
But you do need to keep in mind that certain games revolutionize the industry in a way that we take for granted. Like, action games did not play like God of War before God of War. Third-person shooters did not play like third-person shooters until Resident Evil 4. And so with this game, it was pulling from DMC because that was sort of just what was established at the time, Capcom being a trendsetter with that. And so there's a variety of things where I would say maybe a phrase Mike doesn't like as much. It hasn't aged well,
yeah. But
I do think we also need to keep in mind this is kind of just how they did things back then. So if you're revisiting a game like this, well, that's the way it's going to be.
Sometimes mechanically, I
feel like a half-baked interpretation on a lot of different game mechanics that they pulled from different genres, as with most of the Ninja Gaiden games of this era.
I don't know if I would say half-baked. I think some things are executed pretty well. I do think the combat feels really good. And I like that it's not, like, even though you can do counters and stuff like that, it's not a super counter-based system per se. It's almost more of a dodge base and then combo system. And, there's a decent amount of depth there. But, you're talking about aging, and like mechanically I would maybe argue it hasn't aged too much for me. Where the aging shows up for me is like the super nonsensical story, which is just complete gobbledygook. And then like
I have no idea what happened.
I have no idea, like at first. And that's like, this is a more general point. I almost enjoyed the first bit of the game much more than the later half. Like, the game kind of got worse as it went along, when it was in those ninja environments and you're just fighting ninjas and it's just somebody killed the shrine maiden and they just burned your village, go get revenge. that was all I needed. That was all well and good. And then it kind of just evolved into like demons were there, and there was like the one bad Nazi from Indiana Jones, and the Raiders of the Lost Ark was there for some reason. And Rachel, you want to talk about dated? Rachel character design. Wowie,
Yeah.
wow! That's the most of that era thing I can possibly imagine. I mean, forget even the jiggle physics aside, and of course they are ridiculous and they deserve to be mocked.
I can't forget the jiggle physics.
No,
That's
but
the staying power that I can't stop thinking about it.
no, but just
Well, you can't say it's as bad as Dead or Alive of that same time.
Right.
Nothing quite beats that.
Well, I mean, that's the
but-
thing is because the games are intrinsically linked, right?
But yeah, well, Kasumi's fucking in the game. But at least like Dead or Alive almost owns up to like being like half titillation. That's the point of the game. They have a fucking volleyball spin-off. Here's this ninja game, and here's just a girl in a metal bikini, and it's like she just like shows up. And it's like she's important. Or like, all right, if you say so, she's pretty important. You're gonna even play as her. Like, why?
And also, Dead or Alive. Also, to be fair, it is like excluding beach volleyball, or whatever. Dead or Alive actually is just like beautiful people. The game because the dudes
Yeah.
are all hot too. Like,
Sure.
Obviously, we have Ryu, the main character in here, who is in Dead or Alive as well, and he's just absolutely jacked and stud muffin material. But that all the people in Dead or Alive look that way, and here it's just like what's her name, Rachel, she kind of stands out.
She stands
in a
out.
way that's not great.
It's
It's like unlockable cosmetics, which I found really weird. You guys get
Yeah.
I found kind of creepy. It's like, for like Ryu, it's
Yeah.
like, get a new weapon, get this, like, get a brand new hairstyle for your doll. And I'm like, okay,
there are
game.
some design decisions that I don't that I feel like are old. I agree with you, Mike, that I think the game starts out really strong, and I don't think it's the mechanics that really hold it back. I think it's the design decisions on the second half, especially. But man, like those, I think they're called ambushes, where you're just fighting for what feels like a half
Yeah,
an
you can fight a
hour.
lot of people.
And it's so many people. And then I did that as Rachel for the first time, like, oh man, I'm going to get something awesome for that. It's like, no, you got long blonde hair now.
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
Her hair's are pretty long.
I did that one. Yeah, I did that one, that bridge in the village. I was like, man, I better get something after this. And it was just like a hairstyle. I'm like, oh, cool. But I mean, the whole sections where you play as Rachel were added for Sigma, is my understanding. And yeah, they felt super attacked on, and I don't think they added anything to the game. And it's a bullet point you could put in the back of the box to make people buy it again. Now, like, I'm going to probably start being critical of the game a bit here. I do want to say, though, overall, I did like this game a lot. I think that the action was still a lot of fun. I did like kind of like, running on the walls, jumping around, shooting, hitting people. That's like the core mechanics of it worked pretty well. The story got away from itself, and even the level design, even as soon as you get into the city and like you have this kind of hub area, like I was like, well, why is there a hub area? Why is there all this backtracking stuff? What is this really, like, would this game really have been worse if it was just, here's a level, go through it, here's a level, go through it? Probably not. I think it probably would have worked to the game's advantage, really. But again, it's like just tying into that old Resident Evil design, where it's like, no, you go back to places because you have to find the fucking angel key here and put it into the angel door over there, because that's video games.
Yeah, I mean, games, it works in Resident Evil because that's what it's designed for. This is designed to fight, and I guess kind of had a little bit of an identity crisis trying to be a jack of all trades, just throw everything in there. And not all of it works. It doesn't gel that well. Particularly, what felt old to me were these, okay, we have these enemies, and they do these things, but let's also make this challenge where you have to jump across this gap, but then we have enemies that throw stuff at you, and the challenge is to try to not get stunned in mid-jump to fall into your pit to your death. Like, that's the kind of design that we don't do anymore, that we kind of just forgot about because it was so terrible. And this just happens repeatedly. And then there are enemies that sole purpose is just to stun lock you. And near the end, especially those flying, I don't even remember what animals they are or whatever they are, like fish or something.
The fucking fish.
Yeah, the fish, and they're brutal.
They're brutal.
Like, I got so mad, and I got to the end, and I needed some more supplies. And there's no store right before the final boss. You have to go back down through the stupid fish, and the fish are the worst. They're the least fun thing in the world, and that's just old design where they're like, okay, we have this. We need more enemy variety, but it's bad. What you put it in there?
That fish is all. The game even tells you use the nunchucks here or whatever. It's like, oh, that was the only time, by the way, I ever used another weapon. Did anybody else like actually experiment with weapons when you got it? Because when I would get them, I was like, dude, I spent all this time learning how to use the sword you gave me. I'm not gonna learn a new weapon right now. No,
No.
no.
I picked it up and I'd be like, oh, let's pull it out for a second. And swung it around. Like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then back to the thing where I can do the jump and dash swipe, because that's the thing.
Yes.
That kills most things.
There was never actually a game mechanic interesting enough to make me want to use the other weapons.
Beef, did you use anything else?
No, I was about to say. I was trying to even think like, was there any like situations or like the game like maybe like tells you or makes you think maybe you should try something else, but
Just
no,
the
sword
fish.
feels the best.
The
Yeah,
fish.
just the fish.
Just the fish was the only time the game, like, I got a fucking Kasumi message, was like, hey, you should just use your nunchucks here, because otherwise you're gonna get fucking destroyed by these anchovies or whatever the hell. So, yeah, and that was kind of weird. Like, I appreciate it trying to add variety. I almost wish I could upgrade my sword more instead of that. And I don't, like, maybe it adds replay ability, like, maybe if I went back through it, I'd think about using one of the different weapons or whatnot, but you know, again, I liked that dash move, and I let that like attack, hit him in the air, and then do the pile driver move was so good on a lot of enemies. I relied
Exactly what I did. It was either that or the jump towards them and do the heavy attack
Yes.
that did like the yeah.
Right. So it's like you kind of find what works for a lot of boss fights. Just jumping on a wall and pushing the heavy attack would work a lot, especially that first one. And you know that first one is pretty hard until I figured that out, and that's kind of another thing this game is really well known for is its difficulty. And you know, I went through the whole thing. I'm like, this isn't actually that difficult. And at some point, the game put me on Ninja Dog mode because I died like a certain amount of times in the early levels. Partly because like it taught me the parry mechanic. I was like, okay, let me practice that. I don't care if I died. I know I just saved. And then all of a sudden, Kasumi was like, haha, you kind of suck. I guess I have to help you more. I was like, what? And like according to online, it asked me if I wanted to abandon the ninja way. I don't remember that. But apparently I lowered the difficulty and was on Ninja Dog mode, which I guess
If you die 3 times in a row, I guess, or something like that.
Something about
it asked you. I noticed that too, because when I died and it got game over, I'm just mashing the A button to try to get back in the action, but it defaults to yes when it asks you if you want to lower the difficulty. Unfortunately, I caught it, and I said because it's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Like what am I sure about it? You've never asked me that before, and I hit no, and then it just went back to normal difficulty, but then it kept asking me, so I'm like, well, that's what it was, and I looked it up. It's like, yeah, it just kind of brute forces easy difficulty on you. That's really weird.
It was. It's like I would have picked easy if I wanted, and I like don't be like, do you want to abandon the ninja way? Just say, do you want to drop the game to easy mode? Because again, I'm sure it was like talking to people on Twitch or whatever. I was pushing the A button. I did not catch it. Now, like apparently,
Wear the chicken hat.
Yeah. So like it gave me more items earlier, which whatever. That I don't think that would have helped that much. I think it did actually make the enemies slightly less aggressive. Now I don't really care because I still I had fun. I don't know if I would have had necessarily more fun. The game was harder. I think I would have been able to beat the game if it was harder. Maybe I would have, felt more pride and accomplishment in my beating the game and all that stuff. It was just weird, like, I don't know, Ninja Dog. Now I'm a dog. I'm like as low as a dog. I'm like, no. I don't like variable difficulties in general. Don't lower the difficulty for me. I will go out of my way to tell you if I want to lower the difficulty.
Or at least don't tell me about it. Resident Evil 4 makes it easier if you're getting stomped. And it doesn't say anything. It just gives you more items.
Yeah, there's like smarter ways of doing it. But I mean, so I don't know. So I thought the game didn't live up to like that big difficulty thing. Hey, Joaquin. What can I say that? That's a very normal name. Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin. I was messing up the first thing. Joaquin, thanks for following. I appreciate it. But now, maybe I can't say anything because, again, I got put in Ninja Dog mode. The game wasn't as hard as I was expecting, I guess is what I'm saying. So, thank you, Joaquin. What about you guys? How did you feel about the difficulty?
I'll go again, I guess. I didn't think it was that hard either. Because that's what this game is known for, is like, oh, it's super hard. It's only for the tough. I don't know. I got through it just fine. I was annoyed a few times where I had to. Yeah, there was definitely bosses where I got quote unquote stuck on, but it's maybe spent an extra half an hour more than I, nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's near the end, there's this long stretch that doesn't have a checkpoint where you have to fight 2 old bosses on top of a new boss, on top of several waves of enemies. That got me a few times where I'm just like, oh man, this is an endurance challenge. I started getting a little frustrated actually because I'm like, man, I don't want to fight these old bosses again because I've already fought them like 3 times now. So, but other than that, like I didn't find it too super duper hard. I found it more cheap in certain areas than I did hard. And even then, the save points are pretty relatively generous. They give you a decent amount of currency to buy more health items. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I don't
had
know. Maybe
plenty
I'm
of
just better
currency
at games
too.
now.
Yeah. Beef, what did you think of the difficulty?
Yeah. Well, like you, it also it originally put me in the Ninja Dog. I was like you. I was like, I swear it did not ask.
I
I
swear
was
it
like,
didn't
I'm
ask me
almost
either.
certain it did not ask.
I swear it did not ask me.
It just showed up and
Yeah.
was like, "Well, you're abandoning it." I'm like, "What?" And then I was like, "Cause it didn't." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "This isn't too bad. This is a very difficult game." And I noticed like the difficulty change, and I was like, "All right, I'll go back." I just restarted like after only like 2 missions, and it wasn't even that much worse. So I think basically you're right. You can like still do it on normal. Like it's not significantly easy on Ninja Dog, so it's probably is actually more fun. So,
Mm-mm.
but no, I didn't find it that hard, and maybe that's because like nowadays we do have like really tough games that like especially I like playing like hard games like Dark Souls or Cuphead a lot. So I was like, I kind of know, like how to like just put up with you lost, you
Sure.
try and learn and do that stuff. But no, I liked it a lot.
I mean, it's not hard like how the original Ninja Gaiden was hard, where you had
Oh
lives and
hell
you would
no.
run out of tries. You'd have to go back to the like Ninja Gaiden for the NES was infamous in that the last level, if you died, it would take you back like 3 levels earlier or some bullshit like that. So there's nothing like that here. Sewer, what did you think about the difficulty?
2 things on the difficulty. So the difficulty wasn't actually hard per se. It was just kind of fun to experiment with how to combo together the attacks because that was one highlight of the game were the attacks. But there was an old trope in the 90s and early 2000s of you would cross certain boundaries or thresholds and then enemies would respawn depending on how the game was designed. They would either respawn or you would go back and it would just be desolate and empty. This one in particular, they always respawned if you backtracked whatsoever in any area, even if you didn't actually need to. So I kind of fought the same enemies probably 5 or 6 times more than I was supposed to. But no, overall it was fine. It wasn't hard. It wasn't too easy. It was just kind of like a good balance. I did get dropped to dog mode a couple of times. I really, at the end of the day, I just played around with it just to see what felt fun.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. That's kind of how I felt about it. So now that we've talked a bit, I guess I do kind of want to know, what did everybody think about this game? Did you like it? Because I'm getting the impression maybe some people weren't super hot on it. I ultimately did like it a lot. All its faults and everything. Again, I like retro gaming so much that I find some of that stuff charming. I do think that the game starts off really strong. Like when I first started, I was like, I see why people thought this was the best game ever when it came out. Then towards the end, I'm like, this game absolutely feels like a 2004 game. In some ways that I find charming, but in a lot of ways that even I will say it, do feel quite a bit aged. B, let's go with you again first. What did you think about the game overall?
Yeah, I can go first. Because I think we're a lot alike in this. I also like really liked it, especially at the beginning. It is so. I didn't mention this because when we were talking about the story, I was like, it is so weird how it begins, and I'm like, oh, this is just traditional ninja stuff. And even when it went to like the Zeppelin, I was like, oh, that's fine. It's kind of like still doing this time period, and then it just keeps getting weirder. And you're like, where did this all come from? But especially in like the moment-to-moment gameplay, I was surprised actually how much I still think it holds up. It's a little more like in the later ones when like there's parts where you're doing long jumps up and then you'd fall down. It's like, I gotta keep doing that. I gotta try and climb back up.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it's like it kind of feels its age because like nowadays you don't really have to like if you mess up the game won't be like, well, just climb all the way back up to the top with all this platforming. So but in general I did actually really like it. I don't think it feels its age too much, and it does still look pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I was playing the black, you guys were playing remastered, but I think even on the Series X, like it's upscaled and stuff, so it still looks pretty good. I actually do like it a lot. I'm glad we played it.
Mm-hmm. Randy, what do you think about the game overall?
So overall, I like this a lot. I think this is refreshing to me because we don't really have these types of games anymore. These just kind of action adventure style games. I know that we have a lot of combat focused games like this, but the puzzle elements and the backtracking and stuff, we don't really see too much of those anymore. Most games are kind of open world or they focus really hard on one thing. This mishmash of like platforming and puzzle solving and stuff, it always works for me. I'm always a sucker for that. The parts that I don't think hold up are, yeah, I just think just some weird design decisions at the end, or especially the second half. But I think once the demons kind of show up, it's a little bit not as great. It does turn into a little bit more of a Devil May Cry when I thought they kind of had something with the ninja enemies. Overall, though, with my distance from it, because I finished it like a couple weeks ago, I'm still pretty positive on it. I need more games that kind of are a little bit more generic, if that makes sense.
Yes.
More jack of all trades, master of none. I need more of that in my life, and there's really not that much anymore.
Sewer, what did you think overall?
Game definitely reminds me of when companies were kind of willing to take risks, kind of like this, to explore new medium, different mechanics and different ways to approach games. It was good. I liked it.
Shawn, I know it's been a little bit since you played it, but like, what do you think of when you think about Ninja Gaiden? How does it kind of register with you?
For me, I think my thoughts on the beginning do sum up pretty well for me, where even if I did have the time to go back and play it this month, I probably wouldn't have gone super far. Maybe I would have finished it, but I don't think it's likely. So because I don't necessarily like going back to this era of action games in this style. Like, I'm a huge DMC fan, but I do not like going back before 3 because, like obviously 2 has its problems, but both 1 and 2 are kind of some of the things they were doing back then just don't click with me anymore. It's hard for me to go back after so many quality of life changes in action games over years because character action games are my jam. Like, I love Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta and those more modern types of games. So going back to something like this, it didn't super click with me back then. I think it would be hard for me to go back now. So that's sort of how I'm feeling about it.
So Razzle Jazzled couldn't be here to join the live discussion, but they did leave a message here that I can read for us now about their thoughts on the game. Razzled said, I will freely admit that I don't like overly difficult games or games that are difficult just for the sake of being difficult. Something like Ninja Gaiden Sigma has a bit of a reputation for. As such, I take no shame in saying that I chose to play Ninja Gaiden Sigma HD using Hero Mode and found it to be a really interesting mechanic. Hero Mode is technically the same difficulty as normal, but when the player is low on health, Ryu will automatically block or dodge those attacks that can be avoided and can use an unlimited number of Ninpo, but only for a limited time. Is it Ninpo or Ninpu? I'm sure Christian's going to scream at me later if I get it wrong.
Ninpo.
Ninpo, I was right. Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's not a complete get-out-of-jail-free card. Some attacks can still damage you, and the mode does end after some time regardless of if you finished your fight or not. Early on in the game, while the player is still learning the mechanics, this does effectively function as invincibility. But as the game progresses and the fights get longer and more challenging, you can and will still die if your skills aren't improving. While I still died many times, Hero Mode made the game much more accessible and enjoyable for me as a more casual player. I'm sure some in the Get Good crowd will downplay it, but I can say I was actually able to beat the game using Hero Mode, something that I likely would have given up on had the mode not been there. It successfully walks the line between helping the player too much and not enough. Kudos to the devs. So that's nice that mode exists and that the game, it's a nicer... I like how the actual easier mode you can select is called a Hero Mode, and the easy mode that the game forces you into is called Ninja Dog, by the way.
Yeah, like insulting us.
Yeah, but I am glad that Razzle got to play through the whole thing. like talking about like names of things. The game had a ranking system because of course it has a ranking system, and like even that I found kind of annoying, even though it doesn't matter. But like the game gives you those ninpo, and it's like, oh, these are really strong. And then when you use them, if like you use one of them, your ranking goes down incredibly. It's like, well, do you want me to use these things or not? Like imagine if you're playing Street Fighter like 5, and it was like, oh, you used your super attack, so I guess you're pretty shitty actually.
Yeah. I do want to comment on that real quick because as someone who has played these action games for a long time, and I still love going back to some of them, including the newer ones like Bayonetta that still do the ranking system. I think some people misunderstand where that's coming from because it's definitely not to put down the player. The intention of it being there is replayability and getting those better ranks. It's the arcade roots of a lot of these games, where if you play through the game once and there wasn't any kind of ranking or anything like that, what would you have? You would have maybe the any hidden items to find in the game and whatnot. There's not a lot of replayability there, and so I think for a lot of people that's where getting those higher ranks comes in. Like a lot of people love doing like, I'm gonna do an S rank run of DMC, where I'm gonna try to get S rank on every single level. So I just want to defend that a little bit.
Maybe they should just have Ryu appear in less and less clothes depending on how fast you beat it.
But yeah, that being said, I do think what Razzle Jazzle described here is cool. I actually didn't know that hero mode worked like that. I do think that's a good it's a good compromise. I think. So
I think it's good.
That.
Instead of just like changing like health values or attack damage, I think that's a neat way to do an easier mode. Did anybody ever play or have any interest in the 2 sequels? Because there is like a straight up Sigma version of 2. Then there's some kind of like a direct like some kind of special version of 3.
3 has Razor's Edge, which is
Right.
actually the one that that's the one time people in the hardcore community play the updated version.
Well, people hated the original 3, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember it was a big disappointment, but I guess I'm kind of curious like what 2 was like, because it came out a little bit later, but I wonder like how different is it.
I haven't
Next
played
August,
it.
let's do it.
Next August,
Yeah,
we'll put it back on the card again. Ninja Gaiden 2.
Mm-hmm. I have to imagine it's not that different. I mean, it was still what's the director's name? Hitagaki. I think it was still him at that point. Still
Oh, it was I'm pretty sure all of them are headed up by
Was
him.
he for 3? I couldn't tell. I thought 3 was someone else.
Oh no, yeah. I checked it just now. You're right, it wasn't. But I remember playing the demo of 2 back in the day, and I did like that more because they clearly did learn from what other action games of the time were doing, and so it does feel a lot more updated, a lot more in line. To do the comparison again, it does feel more like the DMC 4 to this game's like more DMC 1 through 3.
Well, because 2 is a 360 game at least too,
Right.
So I don't know how much longer.
It came out in 2008, so there was a good good gap between there for them to improve and update what they had already done here.
Yeah.
Where does everybody fall on their liking of character action games like this, as in general, old style or modern ones or whatever?
That's interesting. So, like, I'm not like the biggest Bayonetta DMC guy. I do like those games okay. I think I famously gave DMC 5, which is super like already a modern classic according to a lot of people. I gave that a 7. So I know. But like Metal Gear Rising, I liked that quite a bit. I liked the God of War games for a while, though they kind of overstayed their welcome. I liked I like a lot of them for a bit, but they kind of quickly get old on me. Like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City was a super great thing, and then every game just had that combat system for a bit, and that got old. So I think when it comes to action games, I might actually almost prefer them 2D. Like right now, I'm playing through Beautiful Joe, and that is like a super satisfying action thing. Or even beat 'em ups, right? Like I like beat 'em ups a lot, so that kind of thing. But in terms of like this kind of action thing, this is kind of actually up my alley. Again, not so much counter based, more I don't even know what you call it, more dodge based, more like response based, more reading the patterns kind of based. How about other people? Where you kind of feel about these kind of games?
The reason I ask is because I think there's a bit of a divide between the way they used to be, or I guess maybe there's two different styles. I feel like Devil May Cry does both styles, where it's a lot of cases it is about getting the combos, getting the score. There is the reason I bring it up because I believe was it Turbo Shawn defending the score
Yeah.
system, whereas I I don't care about the score system at all. So if the game is focused on the score system, it doesn't matter to me. So I kind of fell off of Devil May Cry once it started to get more and more focused on that. I liked Devil May Cry 1 a lot because it was kind of like this. It was an action adventure game with puzzles and keys and stuff like that. And then it turned into, no, you're just going to fight these things and you're going to get as high a combo as possible. Bayonetta never really clicked for me because it is, hey, just get these combos as high as humanly possible. The best DMC Cry, in my opinion, or sorry, DMC Cry, Devil May Cry is DMC, the one that was made by Ninja Theory, because that is more of an action adventure game than the other ones are. It's a platformer in a lot of cases, and it's just weird. I don't know. Like I just need a challenging goal to accomplish. I need uh someone to design cool things for me to pursue, and once I accomplish it, I'm okay. Like I'm done. I don't need to go back and replay for score. You ask like, oh, what else would this game have? Well, I don't know. It's got a 12 to 13 hour campaign. Sounds pretty good to me. Like why do I need a score system like that?
That's fair. I'll jump back in just because I am like the direct opposite of what you just described, where and I totally see that point of view. Like I mentioned, like character action games are my jam. Like Metal Gear Rising, one of my favorite games of all time, and so this type of thing is really right up my alley. And it's why I'm a little more. I don't know if I would even say critical, but I'm just down on this game on a personal level because it's not really my jam as well. I don't think this is a bad game at all. I don't think that games like this are. Outside of some that like some clear ripoffs that didn't do it as good, but that's a separate thing. But for me, I mean, this comes from a place of I'm a big fighting game guy, so yeah, of course I like doing the cool flashy shit. And for me, I actually am in the same place as you, Randy, where I actually don't care about the score because that's not what I do when I replay these games. I do the boss rush mode on Metal Gear Rising like while I'm cooking dinner some nights, just because I love the set pieces and I love the cool moments. And for me, that's where the replayability comes in, is improving as a player and doing that cooler stuff more often. I think that's where when a character action game can really excel is when the game encourages you to just do cool shit, have your character look cool, and you get to see these awesome set pieces play out. So that's why for me, I do like the more, as you describe, like the more combo heavy ones, just simply because I like seeing all the little things that the developers put in as a response to what you're doing as a player.
You know what, I'm thinking like, I never even really thought about much. Do I not like these kind of games that much? And I do, but I realize it's because I actually prefer action RPGs, right? Like I actually would rather play Kingdom Hearts 2 than any Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. And I know that's making some people want to throw up, but that's slightly more my jam, I suppose.
But not Nier Automata, apparently.
Well, oh my God, it's got a lot. It's great.
God.
It's got an okay battle system, and everything else is really good and lifts it up.
We don't need to get into that tonight.
We don't need to get it.
I will stop this.
All right, let's get some final thoughts from everybody. Let's go down the line here. Actually, Soysuke, I see you kind of came in late here. Do you want to sort of just jump in real quick and tell us what you thought about? I don't actually know how much you got to play of Ninja Gaiden.
Well, let me tell you. So, I actually told Turbo Shawn this, I think a couple of months ago, but I told him, hey, this is like one of my favorite games as a kid because it was so challenging that like it took me, I think, 6 months to beat it my first time because like I was only 8 years old and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just one of those special games that I've had in my heart forever that it's just like I love to go back every now and so often and play some of the levels and like, some of it's aged well, some of it hasn't aged well, but Ninja Gaiden was like my first challenging game as a kid, and it was the first one I overcame because there was other challenging games that I gave up on. Like I gave up on Knights of the Old Republic because I could not figure it out at like 8 years old. And then like this was one of those games I could, and it felt empowering, and then I went back to pretty much like led me to beat games that I couldn't beat. It almost like gave me that motivation in a way. So yeah, great game. 10 out of 10.
Awesome. Beef, what are your final thoughts here?
As I say, thankfully we had someone here who actually played it when it came out, so
Yeah.
we don't have to judge
Did I
Sage.
play it when it came out?
Well,
Yeah, I must have, right?
around, yeah, like around probably when it came out.
Yeah, it
Well,
was
I
like
don't
what,
know when
2004 when it came out, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I was like 8 or 9.
God, I would suck at that age.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, I was so bad, so bad.
Were you a ninja dog like me?
Yeah, like I literally would die like every 10 seconds. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Uh,
But just to like wrap up, yeah, I'd still recommend it. Obviously, yeah, there's weird parts, but I do still think like I said, second to second, like combat and the primary gameplay, I think still holds up. Plus, it's a weird example of a 2D franchise going to 3D and working, which we didn't really discuss.
yeah.
The
Right.
transition, but it's weird that like they both have like the comparison of they're both very difficult, but from what I can tell, they do seem still like they had to change a lot to go to 3D. But
I think that's why we didn't bring it up. There's not that much similar. Like Ri is there, but
Yeah.
and they're both hard, and you're both about ninjas, but yeah, they feel very, very different from each other.
Right.
Hey, Jeff's here. Jeff, what do you think about Ninja Gaiden?
I think that I would like pointers for the very beginning of the game and how to get into it, because I've started this a couple times. I've not done it this time, but I've always been into, like, I love the Ninja Gaiden games on NES. So as someone who seemingly had a really good time with it, what should I do?
Razzle Jazzle was talking to us about hero mode, which is like the quote unquote easy mode. And he said it was great because like it doesn't like mess around with values necessarily. It's just if you're close to death, you kind of start automatically blocking a bit. If you just did that, and then you pick up on the combat relatively quickly, especially once you get some stronger moves like this air dash thing, where the game has like one of those reverse difficulty curves to me, where towards the end of the game, it felt way easier in the beginning just because you sort of learn how to play it. So even if you just start with that a bit, I think you kind of would figure it out pretty quickly and then see if you like it or not.
Yeah, get the flying swallow attack.
The flying swallow
that's your best
attack.
Flying swallow. Okay.
I had to look it up because I didn't remember what it was called.
Yeah,
But
always,
it's a good pointer.
always swallow, Jeff.
Oh, you know
damn it.
me. You know I do. Of
and
course
fly
I
while
do.
you do it.
Yeah.
I have it on the Steam Deck. I just keep meaning to boot it up, and I probably will here still soon, even as we move on from it for the game of the month.
Awesome. Randy, last thoughts.
Okay, well, I do think it's refreshing having the kind of jack of all trades kind of game. I was more positive on it than I think a lot of you were, because that's just because I'm old, I guess. I think that a lot of it that doesn't hold up is more design decisions than it is mechanics or graphics. I think all that, well, and story. The story is non-existent or borderline bad. Not borderline bad, it's bad.
Mhm.
But unneeded. I wish there were more games like this that kind of did what this is doing, but overall I had a really good time with it, and I'm glad we picked this one. Found it refreshing.
Sewer, what do you got to say?
Couple of things. In the beginning transition to the city, it felt like it was felt like it was okay. We're gonna design an arcade game. Oh wait, guys, we have to expand this for another 5, 6, 8 hours. Story was kind of like watching Godzilla of the 90s, and to the last discussion, I'll take Bayonetta over this any day. But great game.
Shawn, what's up?
I think I got my thoughts out there pretty well. But yeah, it's like I said, not a bad game, just very of its time in certain ways, and in general, just not my cup of tea is how I would put it.
So that leaves it to me, and I did enjoy this game. I'm really glad I got to finally play through the whole thing. Certainly there were aspects of it that felt aged, especially the story and Rachel in general. Some of the other stuff that was aged, like the camera angle and whatnot, like that stuff I almost find charming to a degree. I do think the game starts off incredibly strongly and kind of slowly gets a little bit worse. Not to the point where it ends up ever being bad. I just think it would have all been stronger if it stuck with ninjas and didn't do quite so much nonsensical demon stuff. But I still think it was a really fun action game, and it was really still well worth playing in 2022. Although the soundtrack wasn't very good, and I'll just say that.
Got to mention the super accurate boob physics too.
Yes. These people have seen so many breasts in the day, and they completely understand how they move.
I
have
looked
to
over to my
applaud them
wife
for
and
it.
Hey,
Man,
that
it
was
is uncanny.
fantastic breast technology for the time.
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
God.
Hey,
They peaked. There's nothing left. It's all downhill from here in terms of breasts.
well, we are voting right now on the Game Club game for next month, and that is actually up to 6 games because we are voting for every game that has lost in a poll so far. Everybody gets 2 votes. You can't vote for the same game twice, but you can vote for 2 games. And our choices here are Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. That'd be interesting to compare it to a much more modern action game. We have Echo: The Tides of Time, My Friend Pedro, Thief Gold, Turok 2: Seeds of Evil, and Earthbound. So a lot of different kind of games here. This when does this poll actually end, Shawn?
It will end, what's the date today? It will end September 1st whenever I am done with breakfast because I did not set
Nice.
a timer this time.
That's fine. You can end it whenever you want to when you get up, and then we'll find out what we're going to be playing in September. You can end it. You can even end it at tomorrow night for all I care. I'm curious to know. I got to know what's going to win.
Yeah, same.
All right, everybody. We have to get ready for Last of the Nintendogs.
Real quick, before we roll, just in case anyone's watching or listening later, make sure keep in mind that if you want to participate in this for the next month, you can do so by joining the Patreon or becoming a member on the YouTube channel, and then getting into the secret channels in Discord, which is where we do discussion over the course of the month, where we have this conversation right here at the end of the month, and where all the organization for this happens.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody in the Discord for joining me. We will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.